I opened the bakery I'd always dreamed of and invited my family to the grand opening. Not a single one came. They all chose Rosy's promotion party instead. As I locked up by myself, Dad messaged, "We need to talk about the bakery." Have you ever poured your entire soul into a lifelong dream, only to have your own family not just abandon you on its biggest day, but actively plot against it? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And it left a scar deeper than any failure ever could. My name is Eileen, and at 32, I finally opened Sweet Gatherings, the bakery I dreamed about since I was a little girl. After sending personal invitations to my entire family, I found myself standing alone in an empty shop, my phone filling with Instagram photos from my sister Rosy's promotion party. The same party every single one of them chose over my grand opening. As I locked up that night, fighting back tears, my phone buzzed with a text from my dad. "We need to discuss the bakery." But before I tell you how my family crushed my dreams on what should have been the happiest day of my life, you need to understand where I came from. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a family where success wasn't just expected, it was demanded. My father, James, built his reputation as a cutthroat attorney at Whitman and Associates, a top law firm. He worked 80-hour weeks, missed most of my school events, but never failed to remind us that his sacrifices were what put food on our table and maintained our position in society. My mother, Diane, balanced her career as a hospital administrator with maintaining our family's social status. She ran our household with clinical efficiency, scheduling activities with the same precision she used to organize hospital departments. Every achievement earned a checkmark in her mental ledger of family success, with extra points for anything that could be mentioned at charity galas or country club brunches. Then there were my siblings, both walking embodiments of my parents' definition of success. My older brother, Tyler, now 35, followed Dad's footsteps into the high-stress world of finance. By 25, he was an investment banker in New York, sending expensive but impersonal gifts and making brief holiday appearances, always talking about deals and market trends I barely understood. My younger sister, Rosy, 29, was the marketing prodigy. She climbed the corporate ladder at Tech Fusion, one of those trendy companies with beanbag chairs and cold brew on tap. Mom and Dad beamed with pride at every promotion, every salary increase, every company perk Rosy flaunted on her carefully curated social media. And then there was me, the middle child with flour perpetually under her fingernails. My love affair with baking began when I was 8, in my grandmother Eliza's kitchen. While my parents pushed Tyler and Rosy toward academic competitions and prestigious internships, Grandma Eliza taught me how to feel the perfect consistency of dough between my fingers. When I was stressed about school, she'd invite me to her small house on the outskirts of town, and we'd spend hours baking together. "Baking is love made visible," she'd say, her hands guiding mine as we shaped cinnamon rolls. "When someone takes a bite of something you baked, they are tasting your heart." Those words lodged in my soul and grew roots. While my siblings collected trophies and certificates, I collected recipes. I documented every technique Grandma Eliza taught me, adding my own adaptations. I experimented, bringing my creations to school bake sales where they always sold out first. My family viewed my passion as cute but inconsequential. "It's a nice hobby, Eileen," my mother would say, emphasizing hobby in that particular tone that made it clear it wasn't to be confused with a career. But you need to focus on activities that build your college applications. During my junior year of high school, I started working at Bailey's Bake Shop. Mrs. Bailey, the owner, became my second mentor. While Grandma Eliza taught me traditional recipes, Mrs. Bailey showed me the business side of baking. Profit margins, inventory, customer service. Most importantly, she showed me that my dream could be a viable career. "You have magic in your hands," Mrs. Bailey told me after watching me decorate a challenging wedding cake. "Not everyone can do what you do. Never let anyone convince you that your talent is just a hobby." When college application season arrived, my parents pushed me toward pre-med. "You've always been good at chemistry," my father reasoned, as if my talent for balancing flavors and understanding chemical reactions in baking somehow translated to a desire to become a doctor. I compromised, majoring in business with a minor in food science, hoping this combination would prepare me for my true goal while appeasing my parents. During my sophomore year, Grandma Eliza passed away. At the reading of her will, I was surprised to learn she'd left me her modest savings. To Eileen, the will stated, who understands that the most important ingredients in any recipe are passion and love. The inheritance wasn't enough to open a bakery immediately, but it was seed money. A vote of confidence from the one person who had always believed in my dream. After college, while my siblings launched their impressive careers, I worked 3 jobs. Barista in the mornings, office assistant during the day, and baking custom cakes from my tiny apartment kitchen on weekends. My family viewed this as my finding myself period, expecting me to eventually give up and pursue a real career. Law school applications are still an option, Dad would mention casually. My firm is always looking for bright young associates. The hospital has a management training program, Mom would add. I could put in a good word. But my vision for sweet gatherings grew clearer with each passing year. I didn't want just any bakery. I wanted a place that embodied the warmth I felt in Grandma Eliza's kitchen. A gathering spot where people could connect over delicious food made with care. I envisioned comfortable seating, neighbors becoming friends, families creating traditions around my seasonal specialties. Display cases filled with innovative creations and perfected classics, including many of Grandma Eliza's recipes. For 7 years, I worked and saved, researched locations, refined my business plan, and built my recipe portfolio. Each step brought me closer to my dream, even as my family continued to view it as a phase I'd eventually outgrow. After years of searching, I finally found the perfect location, a corner storefront in a revitalizing neighborhood, with large windows that flooded the space with natural light. The building had character, exposed brick, original hardwood floors. Most importantly, it was within my budget, thanks to Grandma Eliza's inheritance and my dedicated saving. When I called my family to share the exciting news about signing the lease, their reactions were exactly as I'd expected, yet disappointing nonetheless. A retail lease in this economy? Dad's voice carried the same tone he used for risky investments. Send me the paperwork before you sign anything. Better yet, I could invest in this venture and help guide it properly. I knew what that meant. His investment would come with control, his vision superseding mine until sweet gatherings became unrecognizable from my dream. Mom's response was equally disheartening. Honey, the restaurant industry has such a high failure rate. It's not too late to apply to graduate school. I ran into Dr. Levinson last week, and he mentioned their hospital administration program is still accepting applications. When I called Rosy, her backhanded compliments cut deeper than outright criticism. Wow. Going full steam ahead with the baking thing? That's so brave of you. I could never risk financial security for a passion project. But that's what makes you special, right? You've always marched to your own drum. Tyler was the hardest to reach, always between meetings or flights. When I finally got him on the phone, his response was brief and business-focused. Send me your business plan and 5-year projections. Did you account for first-year losses? What's your marketing budget? Have you stress-tested your financial model? No congratulations, no excitement. Just immediate skepticism and an assumption of failure. Despite their reactions, I threw myself into preparing the space. Coordinating contractors, navigating health permits and business licenses, refining my menu. Every night, I fell into bed exhausted, but fulfilled, one day closer to realizing my vision. During this period, I began forming connections with neighboring business owners. Annie from Bloom and Grow Flowers next door stopped by regularly with coffee and encouragement. Marcus from Cornerstone Books across the street offered marketing advice and promised to stock my pastries in his Reading Nook cafe. We newcomers need to stick together, Annie said one day as we sat on paint buckets in my half-renovated space. This neighborhood has real community potential, and businesses like yours will be the heart of it. As opening day approached, I created a special menu featuring items inspired by my family, hoping their namesake creations would communicate what I struggled to express in words, that despite our differences, they remained important to me. I developed James' Power breakfast scone with espresso and dark chocolate for Dad. Diane's elegant Earl Grey cake with lavender buttercream for Mom. Tyler's Wall Street walnut brownies with cream cheese swirls. And Rosy's marketing maven macarons in bright, Instagram-worthy colors. At the center of my display plan was a special corner dedicated to Grandma Eliza. I framed her photo alongside her handwritten recipe cards for cinnamon rolls and apple pie, the first recipe she ever taught me. I renovated her old wooden rolling pin and placed it on a custom shelf as a tribute. 3 weeks before opening, I sent personalized invitations to each family member. Thick cream cardstock, gold embossing, I invested more than I should have. Each invitation included a personal note, expressing how much their presence would mean to me. The responses trickled in with varying degrees of non-commitment. "We'll try to make it if court adjourns early," Dad texted, penciling it in. "But board meetings that week might run long," Mom replied. "Sounds fun. Work is crazy right now, but we'll see what I can do," came Rosy's response. Tyler simply said, "In meetings that week, we'll check calendar." I tried not to let their lukewarm responses dampen my excitement. Perhaps seeing the finished bakery would change their perspective. Maybe tasting the creations named in their honor would help them understand my passion. 1 week before my grand opening, Rosy called with her news. "I got the promotion to senior marketing director," she squealed into the phone. "The company is throwing a huge party next Saturday to celebrate. Everyone will be there. You'll come, right?" My heart sank. Her celebration was scheduled for the exact same day as my grand opening. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with messages from my parents. "Did you hear about Rosy's amazing news? So proud," Mom texted. "Dinner reservation at Morton's after Rosa's promotion party. Family table for 5, came Dad's message. I stared at my phone, the implication clear. They had automatically included me in their celebration plans for Rosy without even acknowledging the conflict with my grand opening, which they had known about for weeks. When I gently reminded them of the conflict, the responses were swift and clarifying. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime achievement for your sister," Mom replied. "You can have a soft opening another day," Dad suggested, as if years of work and planning could simply be rescheduled. I swallowed my disappointment and focused on final preparations. The menu was perfected, the space was beautiful, marketing materials were distributed, and a small write-up even appeared in the local neighborhood paper. I ordered extra ingredients, prepared contingency plans, and scheduled my day in 15-minute increments. Everything had to be perfect. The night before opening, I stood in the completed space, taking in the realization of my dream. The display cases waited to be filled. The tables were set. The coffee machine gleamed. Despite my family's lack of enthusiasm, I allowed hope to bloom. Maybe seeing the finished bakery in all its glory would change everything. I woke at 3:30 a.m. on opening day, too excited to sleep. Following my minute-by-minute schedule, I began bringing my bakery to life. The kitchen filled with the comforting scents of vanilla, cinnamon, and freshly baked bread. Each pastry crafted with precision and love. By 7 o'clock, the display cases were filled with perfectly arranged pastries, each labeled with handwritten cards. The family-inspired creations occupied prime positions, ready to be appreciated by the very people who had inspired them. At 7:30, Annie arrived with fresh flower arrangements and a special bouquet for the counter. "These are on the house," she insisted, hugging me tightly. "Today is your day to shine." Marcus appeared shortly after with a handmade sign for his bookshop window, directing customers to the grand opening. "I told all my regulars to stop by," he said, placing a small wrapped package on the counter. "A business-warming gift. Open it later." As the clock approached 9 o'clock, the official opening time, I checked my phone. No messages from my family. I sent a group text with a photo of the ready bakery. "All set for opening. Hope to see you soon." No response. At 9 o'clock, I unlocked the doors, turned the sign to open, and welcomed my first customers. A steady stream of neighbors and curious locals filled the morning hours. They ordered coffee, purchased pastries, and many stayed to enjoy their treats. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. "These cinnamon rolls are the best I've ever had," one woman exclaimed. "I'm definitely making this my regular morning stop," a man in a business suit declared. Between serving customers, I constantly checked the door and my phone. Each time the bell chimed, my heart leaped with hope that it would be a family member. Each time my phone buzzed, I checked it immediately, only to find notifications from service providers or congratulatory messages from friends. By 11 o'clock, I had served several dozen customers, but the faces I most wanted to see remained absent. I sent another text. "Great turnout so far. Special treats with your names on them waiting for you." No response. At noon, during a brief lull, I checked social media and immediately wished I hadn't. My feed was filled with photos from Rosy's promotion party, already in full swing despite the early hour. There was Dad, raising a champagne toast in a sleek hotel ballroom. There was Mom, adjusting the "Congratulations Director Rosy" banner. There was Tyler, apparently having flown in for the occasion, arm around Rosy as they posed for a professional photographer. The caption on my mother's post stabbed deepest: "So proud of our successful daughter." The whole family gathered to celebrate this incredible achievement. The whole family. Except me. I put my phone away and plastered on a smile as the afternoon crowd began to arrive. The initial rush had slowed, and though a steady trickle of customers continued, it was clear that opening day sales would not meet my projections. Each hour that passed with empty tables felt like a personal failure, despite the genuine enthusiasm of those who did visit. A local reporter who had promised to cover the opening arrived around 2 o'clock. Lucy Chan from the Neighborhood Chronicle observed my frequent glances toward the door and my increasingly hollow smiles. "Family couldn't make it," she asked gently as she interviewed me about the bakery. I considered lying, but opted for a simple truth. They had another commitment. Lucy's eyes softened with understanding. She shifted her interview questions to focus on my passion for baking and my vision for sweet gatherings as a community space. Her kindness nearly broke my professional composure, but I managed to maintain my smile until she left, promising a feature in the next edition. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the truth was unavoidable. Not a single family member had come. Not one had even called or texted during business hours. The special pastries I had created in their honor remained largely unsold. Their handwritten name cards a painful reminder of my naive hope. As closing time approached, customers dwindled to none. I began the cleanup process with mechanical movements, washing dishes, wiping counters, storing unsold pastries. The day's sales had covered basic expenses, but nothing more. Social media posts from Rosy's celebration continued to appear, each one a fresh wound. Videos of speeches, photos of expensive gifts, images of the family I had been born into celebrating without me. At 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes before closing, my phone finally buzzed with a text from my father. "We need to discuss the bakery." No congratulations, no explanation for their absence, no acknowledgement of my achievement or their broken promises. Just a business-like statement that implied problems needed solving. As I turned the sign to "Closed" and locked the front door, the emotions I had been suppressing all day finally broke through. Alone in my beautiful bakery, surrounded by the physical manifestation of my dream and the evidence of my family's indifference, I sank to the floor and sobbed. I don't know how long I sat there crying when a gentle knock on the glass startled me. Annie and Marcus stood outside, concerned faces peering in. I wiped my tears and let them in. "We thought you might need friends tonight," Annie said, holding up a bottle of champagne. First day of business calls for a proper celebration, whether it was perfect or not, Marcus added, producing 3 glasses from a tote bag. As we sat at one of the tables, toasting my bakery despite the day's disappointments, I realized something important. The family I had been born into might never understand or value my dream. But perhaps I was finding a new kind of family right here in this neighborhood, with people who showed up when it mattered. The morning after my grand opening, I arrived at the bakery early to prepare for my second day of business. Determined to move forward despite yesterday's disappointment, I focused on adjusting my offerings based on what had sold well. I was elbow-deep in dough when the bells above the door jingled. Glancing at my watch, I realized I'd forgotten to lock the front door, and it was still 30 minutes before opening time. Sorry, we're not open yet, I called out, not looking up from my work. That's apparent from the empty tables, my father's crisp voice replied. My head snapped up. There, filing into my bakery like a corporate delegation, was my entire family. Dad led the way in a business suit, leather portfolio tucked under one arm. Mom followed, her critical gaze sweeping the space, noting every detail with the same expression she used when inspecting hospital departments. Rosy entered next, designer handbag swinging from her elbow, sunglasses perched on her head despite the cloudy morning. A tablet in her hand displayed Tyler's face, apparently video calling in from New York. "What are you doing here?" I asked, wiping flour from my hands. "Family meeting," Dad announced, selecting the largest table and gesturing for everyone to sit. "We need to discuss the bakery situation." "I'm preparing for customers," I said, glancing at the clock. "We open in 30 minutes. Based on what we observed yesterday, I doubt you'll be overwhelmed with business," Mom said. Her tone sympathetic, but her words cutting. I flinched, but tried to maintain composure. "You observed? None of you were here yesterday." "Social media exists for a reason," Rosy quipped, tapping her phone. The geotags and check-ins for this place were hardly breaking the internet. My brother's tiny voice emerged from the tablet. I reviewed the neighborhood demographics and foot traffic patterns. This location has problematic fundamentals for a specialty food business. They had been monitoring my opening day from afar while celebrating Rosy. The realization added fresh pain to yesterday's wounds. Dad opened his portfolio and removed a stack of papers. "We've been discussing your situation, and we believe we have a solution that will minimize damage." "My situation?" I echoed, anger beginning to simmer beneath my shock. "Eileen, honey," Mom leaned forward, her voice dropping to the gentle tone she used when delivering bad news to hospital patients. "We all understand the appeal of following a dream, but sometimes dreams need to be adjusted to align with reality. We can help you sell this place before you lose everything," Dad continued, sliding documents across the table. "I've contacted a commercial real estate agent who specializes in restaurant properties. He believes with minimal losses, we can get you out of this lease and recoup some of your investment." I stared at the papers, realizing they were pre-filled listing agreements, ready for my signature. They had prepared these before even seeing my bakery in operation for a full day. Mom reached into her purse and withdrew several folded papers. I took the liberty of completing medical school applications for 3 programs that accept late admissions. Your undergraduate grades were strong enough that with the right personal statement explaining this detour, you could begin classes this fall. Tyler's face on the screen looked almost bored. "I've run the numbers, Eileen. Based on industry averages and your location, you're looking at insolvency within 4 months. 6, if you drastically cut expenses, which would further compromise quality and accelerate the failure cycle." Rosy, who had been taking photos of my bakery while they talked, finally joined the conversation. "Look, it's not all bad news. I convinced my boss to open an entry-level position in our marketing department. The pay's not great, but with your background, you could move up quickly." She shrugged, her expression making it clear this was a major concession, offered out of pity. They continued talking over each other, outlining my failure and their solutions. My dream reduced to a problem requiring their intervention. My years of work dismissed as a misguided phase. Their absence yesterday reframed as rational detachment rather than hurtful abandonment. As they spoke, the bells above the door jingled again, and Mrs. Bailey walked in carrying a small gift basket. She stopped short at the sight of my family. "Eileen, dear, I came to congratulate you on your opening." "Is this your family?" she asked, approaching with a warm smile. Dad glanced up with a dismissive expression he reserved for service personnel. "We are in the middle of a private discussion. Perhaps you could return during business hours." Mrs. Bailey's smile did not waver. "I'm Adelaide Bailey, owner of Bailey's Bake Shop." "Well, Bailey's Bake Shop's now, since we've expanded to 5 locations." She extended her hand, which Dad suddenly seemed more interested in shaking. "I've known Eileen since she was 16 and recognized her exceptional talent immediately." The atmosphere shifted subtly. Success was a language my family understood, and Mrs. Bailey spoke it fluently. Mom straightened in her chair. Rosy lowered her phone. Even Tyler's expression on the tablet screen sharpened with interest. 5 locations? Dad repeated. That's quite an accomplishment in such a competitive industry. Indeed, Mrs. Bailey responded, placing the gift basket on the counter. Which is why I have complete faith in Eileen's success. Her creativity and business acumen remind me of myself at her age. Though I dare say her technical skills surpass what mine were then. She turned to me with genuine pride. I wanted to bring this welcome basket and let you know how sorry I am to have missed your opening. My flight from the baking conference in Chicago was delayed. The contrast between Mrs. Bailey's sincere regret for missing one day and my family's complete absence despite weeks of notice hung in the air like the scent of burnt sugar. You know, Mrs. Bailey continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension. Eliza spoke of her granddaughter's talent constantly at our community baking club. She always said you would surpass all expectations, Eileen. She believed your understanding of how food brings people together was your true gift. A memory surfaced, then, sharp and painful. Grandma Eliza trying to convince my parents to attend my high school culinary showcase. Their polite refusals, her disappointed but unsurprised expression. She had always known they would never understand my passion. Something inside me broke and reformed in that moment, stronger and more defined. Why did none of you come yesterday? I asked, interrupting whatever financial point Tyler was making through the tablet. An uncomfortable silence fell. My family exchanged glances of familiar, silent communication. We told you about Rosy's promotion party, Mom finally said. It was a conflict we could not avoid, Dad added. The company CEO was there, Rosy pointed out. It was a career-defining moment. I shook my head. The party started at noon. My opening began at 9. You could have come for even 30 minutes. One of you. Any of you. More uncomfortable silence. Just tell me the truth, I pressed. For once, be honest about why my bakery, my dream, was not worth even a brief appearance. It was Tyler who finally spoke the truth, his digital presence perhaps making honesty easier. The family discussed it and decided that attending Rosy's event sent the right message about what achievements the family values. The words hit me like a physical blow. You discussed it? All of you? You made a collective decision not to support me. Mom flushed, but lifted her chin defensively. Real achievements deserve real celebrations, Eileen. Your sister has worked incredibly hard to earn her position. And I haven't? I gestured around at my bakery, my voice rising. I've worked 3 jobs for 7 years to save for this place. I've tested hundreds of recipes, built a business plan, secured a lease, navigated permits and health codes, and created something from nothing. How is that not an achievement? It's a nice effort, Dad said in his patronizing tone. But let us be realistic about the difference between opening a small bakery and becoming the youngest director in a Fortune 500 company. We're trying to help you, Mom added. Before this situation becomes any more financially damaging. Dad tapped the listing agreements. You have 2 choices, Eileen. You can sign these papers and begin the process of extracting yourself from this mistake with our help, or you can continue on this path without our support, financial or otherwise. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. I looked at each of their faces, seeing not malice, but a genuine belief that they were acting in my best interest. They truly could not see the value in what I had built because it did not align with their definition of success. Mrs. Bailey placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. The first customers of the day were peering through the front windows, waiting for opening time. I think you all need to leave now, I said quietly. I have a business to run. Eileen, Dad began, his voice hardening. No. The word came out stronger than I expected. For my entire life, you have treated my passion as a phase to outgrow, a hobby to indulge, or a mistake to correct. Not one of you showed up yesterday for the most important day of my professional life. Now you arrive with plans to dismantle my dream before it has even had a chance to succeed. I don't want your help. Not like this. I walked to the door and held it open. Please leave. Customers are waiting. They gathered their papers slowly, expressions ranging from shocked to hurt to angry. As they filed past me, Dad paused. This conversation is not over, he said quietly. When you are ready to be reasonable, call us. The bells jingled as they departed, and I welcomed my first customers with a professional smile that hid the storm raging within. The week following my family's impromptu intervention was the darkest period since opening sweet gatherings. Despite my brave stand that morning, their words had planted seeds of doubt that grew with each slow business day. My initial creative energy dimmed, and I found myself going through the motions, without the passion that had previously fueled every batch of dough. Sales declined as my own enthusiasm waned. Customers could sense the difference in both the atmosphere and the food. Where once my pastries had been created with joy and attention to detail, they were now produced with technical proficiency, but lacked the special touch that had made them exceptional. Annie noticed the change immediately. She began stopping by daily, sometimes bringing lunch, other times just sitting with me during slow periods. Marcus developed a habit of bringing afternoon coffee and staying to help with cleanup. Their quiet support kept me functioning when giving up seemed easiest. My family, meanwhile, continued their campaign of concerned pressure. Dad sent daily messages about the real estate agent being ready when you are. Mom forwarded information about medical school orientations with notes like, "Just keeping options open for you, dear." Rosy's social media featured not-so-subtle posts about knowing when to pivot and failing forward. Tyler sent spreadsheets projecting my business decline with clinical precision. The most painful development came when I discovered, through a casual comment from a distant cousin who came to the bakery, that my family had actively discouraged extended relatives from supporting my business. "We were told you were figuring things out and preferred space to work through the process," she explained awkwardly. "Otherwise, we all would have come to your opening." Each night I returned to my apartment physically exhausted and emotionally drained. The bakery wasn't failing outright, but it was struggling to gain momentum. The neighborhood foot traffic wasn't converting to regular customers at the rate I had projected. The special touches that made sweet gatherings unique required time and energy I was finding harder to summon each day. 2 weeks after opening, while cleaning out a storage cabinet to make room for additional supplies, I discovered a dusty box I had packed but forgotten. Inside was Grandma Eliza's recipe journal, filled with her handwriting and margin notes. As I flipped through the familiar pages, a sealed envelope fell out, my name written in her shaky script. I stared at it, realizing she must have placed it there before her death, perhaps anticipating I would find it when I finally opened my bakery. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. "My dearest Eileen," it began. "If you are reading this, you have found the courage to pursue your dream despite all obstacles. I always knew you would. From the first time your little hands pressed into dough beside mine, I saw in you a special gift, not just for baking, but for understanding how food brings joy and connection to others." Tears blurred my vision as I continued reading. "Your parents and siblings may never understand your passion the way I do. They measure success by society's standards, while you measure it by the happiness you create. Neither is wrong, simply different. But never doubt that your path is valid and valuable. The world needs artists and nurturers as much as it needs executives and professionals." The letter continued, recounting specific memories of our time together, her observations of my growth as a baker. She mentioned recipes we had created, techniques she had taught me, and moments when my unique perspective had improved a traditional approach. "Remember, sweet girl, that success is not measured by others' recognition, but by the fulfillment you find in your work and the lives you touch with your gifts. My greatest joy has been watching you discover your passion. My greatest hope is that you will nurture it, even when others cannot see its worth." The letter ended with a postscript that broke the dam of my emotions. "The true secret ingredient in any recipe is love. Your bakery will succeed because no one understands this better than you." I sat on the storage room floor, clutching her letter, sobbing until no more tears would come. Then, for the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Grandma Eliza had always believed in me, not despite my different path, but because of it. Her validation had never been contingent on me conforming to traditional success metrics. She had loved me for exactly who I was. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt since before the opening. I arrived at the bakery early and began creating new recipes. Not the family tribute items that had gone largely unsold, but creations that reflected my true sensibilities. I developed a lemon lavender shortbread that captured the simple elegance I admired. I perfected a dark chocolate cherry sourdough that balanced complexity with comfort. I created a seasonal fruit galette with a messy, rustic appearance, but harmonious flavors that made customers close their eyes in appreciation with the first bite. Annie noticed the change immediately when she stopped by that afternoon. "The light is back in your eyes," she observed. "What happened?" I showed her Grandma Eliza's letter and explained how it had reminded me why I started baking in the first place. "I've been trying to prove my worth to people who measure by a different scale. It's time I stopped seeking their validation." "You know," Annie said thoughtfully, "we newcomers to this neighborhood are all struggling with the slow build of customer awareness. What if we created an event together? Something to showcase all our businesses and build community connection." Marcus, arriving with his usual afternoon coffee, overheard the suggestion and immediately built upon it. "A community gathering. Exactly what your bakery is named for. We could have readings from local authors at my shop, flower arranging mini classes from Annie, and featured pastries from you." The idea took root and began to grow. For the first time since my disastrous opening day, I felt excitement bubbling up again. Not the desperate hope for family approval that had colored my grand opening, but something more sustainable, a vision based on community connection rather than family validation. Lucy Chin, the reporter who had covered my opening, called that week to follow up on how business was progressing. When I mentioned the community event we were planning, she immediately offered to write a feature piece. "This is exactly the kind of local business cooperation the Chronicle likes to highlight," she explained. A collaborative event featuring multiple new businesses could draw attention from throughout the city, not just the neighborhood. That evening, I made the most difficult decision since opening the bakery. I created a new signature item called Eliza's Legacy, a cinnamon roll with apple filling and brown butter glaze that combined elements from both of my grandmother's most beloved recipes. I placed it prominently in my display case with a small card explaining its significance. What I did not do was create any new items bearing my immediate family's names or send them invitations to the upcoming community event. The announcement would go out on social media and through local channels, but I would no longer desperately seek their approval or attendance. As I locked up the bakery that night, my phone buzzed with another text from my father. "The commercial property market is heating up. We should list soon before values decline further. Call me." For the first time, I did not feel a stab of pain or doubt when reading his message. Instead, I felt the calm certainty that I was choosing my own path forward. Whether Sweet Gatherings succeeded or failed, it would do so on my terms, as a reflection of my vision, rather than a compromise designed to win approval I might never receive. The 3 weeks following my discovery of Grandma Eliza's letter were filled with purposeful activity as Annie, Marcus, and I planned our community gathering event. What began as a simple cross-promotion grew into a neighborhood-wide celebration as other local businesses joined our effort. The vintage clothing boutique down the street offered to provide outfits for a small fashion show. The craft brewery around the corner created a special pale ale to complement my pastries. Even the yoga studio agreed to hold free mini sessions in the park across from our shops. Rather than seeking external validation, I focused on authentic connection. My social media strategy shifted from perfectly staged food photos to behind-the-scenes glimpses of bakery life. I shared stories about recipe development, including failures and successes. I posted about the relationships forming between regular customers who met at my tables. The response was immediate and positive, with engagement increasing as people connected with the genuine journey rather than a polished facade. Lucy Chen's article appeared in the Neighborhood Chronicle 2 weeks before our event, highlighting the collaborative spirit of the new businesses. Sweet Gatherings bakery owner Eileen Marshall exemplifies the community-focused entrepreneurship revitalizing the district, she wrote. Her approach treats food not just as a product, but as a medium for human connection. The article was shared widely online, drawing attention from citywide publications and food bloggers. My social media followers grew steadily, with many expressing excitement about the upcoming event. For the first time, I felt my bakery gaining genuine momentum, driven by authentic interest rather than obligation. I did not send my family invitations to the community gathering, but I did post public announcements on all platforms. Whether they attended would be entirely their choice, based on genuine interest rather than guilt or manipulation. The morning of the event arrived with perfect early autumn weather, crisp enough to make hot drinks appealing, but sunny enough for outdoor activities. I had been baking since midnight, preparing an expanded menu featuring both customer favorites and special items created specifically for the day, including a prominent display of Eliza's legacy cinnamon rolls. Annie arrived at dawn with elaborate flower arrangements. Marcus set up a book exchange cart with baking-themed titles. By 9 a.m., an hour before official opening, a line had already formed outside Sweet Gatherings. "This is really happening," I whispered to Annie as we peeked out the window at the growing crowd. "This is what happens when you build something authentic," she replied, squeezing my hand. When we opened the doors, people flowed in steadily, filling the bakery with energy and conversation. The display cases emptied faster than I could restock them, with Eliza's legacy selling out within the first hour. Every table was filled with customers sharing space with strangers who quickly became conversation partners. The community I had envisioned when naming my bakery was manifesting before my eyes. Mid-morning, a familiar figure appeared at the counter. Mrs. Bailey stood there, beaming with pride, accompanied by 3 other women. "Eileen, these are some of my former employees who have gone on to open their own successful bakeries," she introduced them. "We've formed something of a mentorship network, and we would love to have you join us." As I thanked her, overwhelmed by the offer, I noticed my phone buzzing with notifications. Photos from the community gathering were being shared widely, including by food influencers who had made the trip specifically to attend. The hashtag Sweet Gatherings was trending locally, with people posting images of their purchases and the lively atmosphere. By noon, it became clear that I had underestimated turnout. Pastry supplies were running dangerously low despite my extensive preparation. I was considering an early closure when Lucy Chen arrived with the owner of Riverfront Restaurant, one of the most popular farm-to-table establishments in the city. "Mark has an interesting proposition for you," Lucy said after introducing us. He had been sampling my pastries and wanted to discuss a potential partnership. Mark explained that he had been searching for a local bakery to supply bread and desserts for his restaurant. "Your flavor profiles and commitment to quality ingredients align perfectly with our ethos," he said. "We would start with a small weekly order, but if it works well, we could expand significantly." As I discussed logistics with Mark, I spotted a woman photographing my menu and display case with a professional camera. She introduced herself as a representative from the Small Business Development Grant Committee. "We focus on innovative local businesses that contribute to neighborhood revitalization," she explained, handing me her card. "Your collaborative approach with neighboring businesses is exactly the kind of economic development model we seek to support. I would love to send you grant application materials." The day continued to exceed all expectations. By closing time, Sweet Gatherings had served more customers in one day than in the entire previous week. Every pastry had sold, business connections had formed, and most importantly, the bakery had established itself as a genuine community hub. As I tallied receipts that evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unexpected source. "My father had sent a formal message. Saw the coverage of your event today. Congratulations on the turnout. Available to discuss business growth strategies if interested." No warmth, no admission of his previous dismissiveness, but an acknowledgement of observable success. It was followed by messages from the rest of the family in quick succession. "Mom, your bakery looked lovely in the photos online. The flower arrangements were exquisite. You always did have an eye for aesthetics. Rosy, that social media strategy is generating serious engagement. Clever approach targeting the community angle. My team was discussing it today. Tyler, wholesale accounts provide stable revenue streams. The restaurant connection is worth pursuing. Consent comparative analysis if helpful." Their messages reflected their unchanged perspectives, each viewing my success through their particular professional lens rather than understanding what truly mattered to me. Yet there was a new tone of respect, however grudging, in their communications. I responded politely but briefly to each, neither seeking their approval nor rejecting their tentative overtures. My focus remained on building what I had started, rather than vindicating myself in their eyes. In the following weeks, Sweet Gatherings experienced steady growth. The partnership with Riverfront Restaurant provided a reliable wholesale income stream that stabilized finances. Several other restaurants reached out with similar inquiries. The small business grant application advanced to the final round of consideration. Most importantly, regular customers began to form, people whose names and preferences I came to know, whose lives intersected with mine through the simple medium of food shared in a welcoming space. A month after the community gathering event, Sweet Gatherings recorded its first consistently profitable week. The milestone prompted me to hire my first employee, Jessica, a culinary school graduate who shared my philosophy about food as a means of connection. With help in the kitchen, I could focus more on creative development and community-building aspects of the business. My family maintained a cautious distance, occasionally sending messages that revealed they were monitoring my progress from afar. Their communications always carried an undercurrent of surprise at my continuing success, as if they were still waiting for the failure they had predicted. I responded with polite updates, but no longer felt the desperate need for their understanding that had once consumed me. In this new chapter, I found a quiet confidence growing. Sweet Gatherings was becoming exactly what I had envisioned. Not because I had finally won my family's approval, but because I had stopped measuring success by their standards and started living according to my own. 6 months after the community gathering event, Sweet Gatherings had evolved beyond my initial vision in the most wonderful ways. The bakery had established itself as a neighborhood institution, with regular customers who had become friends and a reputation that drew visitors from across the city. The small business grant had funded an expanded kitchen and the addition of outdoor seating, allowing for increased production and capacity. My most meaningful innovation was the creation of Chosen Family Sundays, a monthly event where customers could reserve the entire bakery for a shared community meal. I provided the space, bread, and desserts, while attendees brought dishes to share. The concept resonated deeply with people seeking connection in an often fragmented urban environment. Annie, Marcus, and several other local business owners had become my closest friends and most trusted advisors. We met weekly to share business challenges and victories, supporting each other through the inevitable ups and downs of entrepreneurship. Mrs. Bailey's mentorship network provided professional development opportunities one could never have accessed alone, and her wisdom helped me navigate complex business decisions with confidence. My relationship with my family entered a new phase during this period, one characterized by careful rebuilding on my terms, rather than desperate seeking of approval on theirs. The change began subtly, with their gradual acknowledgement of Sweet Gatherings as a legitimate business rather than a hobby or phase. The first significant shift occurred when my father attended a special event at the bakery without attempting to offer unsolicited business advice. He arrived alone, observed the operations with his analytical eye, and purchased several items before leaving with a simple, "You have built something functional here." From my father, this constituted high praise. More importantly, he had come on his own initiative and engaged with my world without trying to remake it according to his standards. My mother began stopping by occasionally with friends, a form of social acknowledgement that meant more than her words. "I told my hospital board about your bakery," she mentioned during one visit, a hint of genuine pride in her voice for the first time. Several of them have become regular customers. Rosy's approach to reconciliation involved professional respect before personal connection. "Your social media presence has serious engagement metrics," she noted during a rare Sunday visit. "My team actually referenced your community building strategy in a recent presentation." Later, more quietly, she added, "I think I've been comparing our accomplishments since we were kids. Maybe we could just be sisters instead of competitors." Tyler made the most dramatic gesture, flying in from New York specifically to visit the bakery. He arrived with his usual spreadsheets, but also with uncharacteristic humility. "Your financial trajectory has defied standard industry projections," he admitted. "I was working from models that did not account for the community investment factor you prioritized." There are some lessons here for traditional business approaches. I welcomed these overtures with cautious optimism. The wounds from their absence at my opening and their subsequent intervention attempt had healed, but left scars. I established boundaries around how we discussed my business and my choices, making it clear that respectful engagement was welcome, while controlling behavior was not. I am open to rebuilding our relationship, I told my father during a particularly honest conversation, but that requires acceptance of who I actually am, not who you wish I would become. The most profound healing in my life, however, had nothing to do with family reconciliation. It came from the realization that my worth was not determined by their validation. The journey from seeking their approval to finding my own measure of success had transformed me in ways that extended far beyond business ownership. As Sweet Gatherings thrived, I expanded the space to include Eliza's Corner, a special area featuring my grandmother's photo, recipe books, and a small library of baking resources. This space became the heart of our community outreach programs, including free baking classes for underprivileged youth and a weekly senior citizens coffee gathering. A year after opening, Sweet Gatherings was featured in a national publications article on community-centered business models driving neighborhood revitalization. The writer highlighted not just the quality of our products, but the intentional cultivation of connection that made the bakery special. Marshall has created more than a successful business, the article concluded. She has established a template for how commercial spaces can foster genuine community in an age of digital isolation. On the first anniversary of Sweet Gatherings, we hosted a celebration that filled the bakery and spilled out onto the sidewalk. My family attended, not as central figures, but as guests among many, taking their place in the wider community that had embraced my vision. As I looked around at the gathering that evening, I realized how perfectly the reality had come to match the name I had chosen. Sweet Gatherings had indeed become a place where sweetness, both literal and metaphorical, brought people together. The journey had not followed the path I initially imagined, but it had led to a destination more meaningful than I could have planned. The most valuable lesson I learned throughout this year was not about business strategy or even about baking. It was about the nature of validation and the source of true confidence. My family's inability to recognize the value in my dream had initially seemed like the greatest obstacle to my success. In reality, it became the catalyst for my most significant growth. Sometimes our dreams succeed not despite family disappointment, but because it forces us to find our true strength. When external validation disappears, we must learn to trust our own vision and values. That painful process of separation and self-trust ultimately leads to more authentic achievement than success that comes through conforming to others' expectations. As the anniversary celebration wound down, I found a quiet moment to thank the people who had truly supported my journey. Not with grandiose speeches, but with the simple, honest connection that had become the hallmark of Sweet Gatherings. I'd love to know if any of you have experienced something similar in your own lives. Have you ever had to choose between following your passion and meeting others' expectations? Did you find your own version of chosen family along the way? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.